Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining us here at the 5-day challenge, Healing the Divide Sisterhood Intensive. We are so grateful that you're here. And I just want to thank Vilma so much for being an awesome co-conspirator, moderator. Thank you for being here, Vilma. You look lovely.
Thank you.
I
Same to you.
Awesome. Awesome. And I also want to say hello to Charles, who starts us off with a really great quote. For the sake of all women, women need to support one another, and racism and patriarchy must end. Thank you so much for that, Charles. I would add, for the sake of all humanity, for the sake of all people, because obviously, patriarchy serves men, but it really only serves a small portion of men. And the vast majority of men are harmed by patriarchy. And we really welcome our male friends, our non-binary, gender expansive. Everybody is welcome here, and everybody except for the interracial sisterhood retreats, when it really is women, and of course trans women are welcome too. When we have interracial sisterhood events, there are plenty of men who come to those events, as well as non-binary people. But thank you, everyone who's joining us. I do want to add something just to make sure it's clear, and I'm going to put it in the comments too, that this is being recorded and will live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So I just say that because we really do want your thoughts and ideas and input. And I know that at this time it's particularly sensitive with everything going on as far as surveillance, particularly around these types of ideas. So please do not comment or things of that nature if you don't want it to be known that you were here. Oop. Oh, yes, sorry. I'm showing this. Patriarchy harms men, but that's a whole separate discussion for a separate event. Yes, let's have that conversation. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Wendy, for saying that. And welcome. Okay, we got a lot of ground to cover, so let's dive right in. We're going to begin as we did yesterday with meditation. We're going to actually do a little pranayama breath work. This was something that I learned actually at Glide Memorial Church. We did this wonderful. We have a pranayama instructor there, and she led us in this practice, and it's really, really good. So we're going to do some alternate nostril breathing. So you can. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to use my left hand. I'm going to put my forefinger on my one nostril. Okay. And I'm going to breathe in through the other nostril. And then I'm going to switch using my thumb and breathe out through the other nostril. Okay. And then I'm going to breathe in. And then I'm going to switch and breathe out. And then I'm going to breathe in. And as we're doing this practice, we'll go 10 rounds. And I want you to, as you're breathing in, breathe in compassion for yourself. And as you're breathing out, breathe out compassion for other people. Okay? So get grounded. Put your thumb on your one nostril. Have your forefinger ready. And we're going to breathe in. Compassion for ourselves. Cover that and breathe out. compassion for others. Breathe in, compassion for self. Breathe out, compassion for others. Breathe in, compassion for self. Breathe out, compassion for others. Breathe in, compassion for self. Breathe out, compassion for others. Breathe in, compassion for self. Breathe out, compassion for others. Breathe in, compassion for self. Breathe out, compassion for others. And welcome. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. How was that meditation for you, Vilma?
I think just paying attention to the breath is always a great place to start in any activity, anytime you can connect with your breath. It's great.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I hope everyone here enjoyed that as well. So this is a 5-day sisterhood intensive. And yesterday was our first day. And that's when we talked about what is interracial sisterhood and why is it needed. And I introduced myself and shared a little bit about who I am. I'll do that briefly now because some people are joining us for the first time. I'm Karen Fleshman. I'm the founder of the Interracial Sisterhood Coalition, and we create safe, generative, opt-in places outside of the workplace for women to hear each other, listen to each other's stories, and learn to relate across difference as equals so we can unite across difference and secure our collective safety and freedom. And I'm joined here by my favorite hype woman, professional feminist, DJ on the powerful, powerful, powerful uh, KPFA Women's Magazine. Highly recommend listening on Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific, and you can hear it live online at kpfa.org. Vilma, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about a second day, and I'm looking forward to what I get to learn and experience with everyone today.
Thank you. Thank you. So, how this works is you can put comments in the chat. As we mentioned, this is being recorded. It will live on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. So, please, if you don't want your comments to show, please do not make comments. Okay, but we're going to get right into it. So, today we are talking about letting go of our internalized, racist, and patriarchal beliefs. So I'm going to start by looking at some definitions. What is a racist idea? Any idea that suggests one racial group is inferior or superior to another. And this comes from Dr. Ibram Kendi, stamped from the beginning. So this idea that there is a racial hierarchy and people are more human or less human based on their skin color. And then American patriarchy. And I highly recommend everyone pick up this book, Erased: What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us, by Dr. Anna Malika Tubbs. She offers a very robust definition of American patriarchy in this book, and it is so helpful. And and I highly recommend everybody read it. This is just a snippet of what she has to say about American patriarchy. It relies on putting white men at the top of the hierarchy and keeping power out of the hands of everyone else, unless it serves the dominant group to include them, usually only temporarily, if so. And she also says that patriarchy is like a cobweb and we can feel it. It's on us and it's constantly irritating us and it's there. But until we start to really name it and see it for what it is, then we're able to pull it off of ourselves and we're able to reach to other people and pull it off of them as well. And this book really helps you in doing that. I highly, highly recommend. And then last time we also spoke about this concept of gendered racism from Dr. Philomena Essed, who said that women of color experience everyday racism at the intersection of their race and gender. So it's not just racism and it's not just sexism, but it's both at the same time. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw's concept of intersectionality. Everyday racism has been useful in showing that systemic racism is reproduced largely through routine and taken for granted practices and procedures in everyday life. Okay. So, this kind of interpersonal racism serves to reproduce systemic racism and put us all in our place in this hierarchy. And that what we're trying to do is to identify how those beliefs got into us and then to get rid of them, okay? To clean the junk drawers of our minds. That is what we are going to be talking about today. So, racism and patriarchy operate on many levels. There's internalized, so it's the little racist patriarchal voice inside my head telling me about myself and what I should do, how I should show up in the world, and telling me how to interpret other people, how to interact with other people. That is internalized racism and patriarchy. And we can have beliefs about other people, and sometimes we can have internalized racist and patriarchal beliefs about our own self and try to oppress ourselves in order to get closer to the white men in power. Then there's interpersonal racism and patriarchy, and that's how it shows up in the way that we interact with each other. When I see Vilma, my internalized patriarchal beliefs about her and about me show up in that interaction, okay, as well as her internalized patriarchal and racist beliefs about me. And that is why often our interactions are not so great between women, and particularly between white women and women of color. Then there is institutional patriarchy and racism, which is also institutional white supremacy. Because when we're talking about the institutions, this is where whiteness really holds the power. And, many people come into institutions, and I'm talking any kind of institution. It could be a school, it could be a police department, it could be a workplace, it could be a hospital, it could be a university. But people of many different races enter these institutions, and then they have vastly differing outcomes, often, that is determined by their race, by their gender, what they experience inside that institution. Not everybody is having the same experience. And we see that, for example, in the Black maternal health care crisis in this country, that Black women, when they go to the hospital to deliver their babies, are much more likely to suffer complications that harm them or harm their babies than women of other races. And this is not because there's something wrong with the Black women. This is because there's something wrong with the hospital and the people who are there to care for the Black women. And the people who run the hospitals are not doing anything to change this. It is going on and on and on. So, this is institutional racism and patriarchy in the hospital setting. That's what we're talking about here. And we know that it is possible. I believe it was Norway. They have a 0% maternal death rate. Okay. The United States has the highest maternal death rate of any developed country. It is possible to have a 0% death rate, but we just don't value women, and we particularly don't value Black women enough to get to a 0% maternal mortality rate. That is an example of institutional and systemic racism, right? Because all these institutions collude. It's not only the hospital that's causing that maternal mortality rate, it's the discrimination that Black women are experiencing in the workplace, in the community. All these different experiences, they may live in a Black neighborhood that has a food desert. Although the statistics remain the same, whether you're a highly compensated, wealthier Black woman, you're still going to experience institutional racism in the hospital. But what I'm saying is that there's many different factors, in addition to the institutional racism at the hospital, that are causing the Black maternal health care crisis. And any thoughts or reflections on what I've shared so far, Vilma, and anybody in the audience?
I just wanted to share that I think a lot of this, there's that phrase, over my mask of me is your mask of me. Like, we all have
Mm.
this personas, and then people have what they think of you, and it's sometimes we think we're relating interpersonally and honestly, but sometimes there are these masks and personas that we put over others, and we actually put over ourselves. And I think trying to relate interpersonally in an interracial way, we have to be cognizant of that.
100% Vilma. And I also want to add, that we'll be talking tomorrow about intergenerational trauma. So it's not only our beliefs about each other, but as Resma Menachem teaches us, it lives in our bodies. That when you and I interact, Vilma, it's not just you and me, but it's me, my ancestors, everything my ancestors did to your ancestors, and you and your ancestors in that interaction. And that is a whole other level. It's not just an intellectual exercise to like root out our racist beliefs. We have to really mind our energy and our body language, our looks. People think, so many people think that like if you just don't use certain racial slurs, that's it. You're not a racist. But it lives in your body. So much of racism, interpersonal racism, is nonverbal. And we have to be mindful of that in the interracial interactions too. Here is something I know for sure. The people who profit from institutional and systemic racism and patriarchy will never change racist and patriarchal institutions and systems. It's going to take a movement of people like you and me to create new institutions and systems and make theirs obsolete. Okay? The people who benefit, they're going to keep these. This is such a profitable business. Racism and patriarchy is so profitable. It is so lucrative. It's so powerful, for a few people to accumulate tremendous wealth and power, and they're never going to stop doing it because it's not in their self-interest to do so. But the good news is, there those of us that this does not serve, we are the vast majority of people. And so when we unite, we have the power to transform everything. And that is the work of the Interracial Sisterhood Coalition. And also, it's not going to come from the top down, it's going to come from the grassroots up. It's going to come from community level change going up. So I have a question for everyone, and thank you for these comments. Thank you. Yes, and Charles, we will definitely invite you to tomorrow's event. Why do the people who profit from racism and patriarchy pit everyone else against each other? Invest in teaching racist ideas, design racially segregated neighborhoods and racially segregated schools, erase Black history, and vilify trans and queer people. Any thoughts on that one? And go ahead and put it in the comments if you want to, or Vilma, do you have some thoughts on this?
Yes, I mean, obviously, divide and conquer has been one of the oldest tricks in the book, right? There's a movement has always been to keep people segregated, keep working class, pitting a black, white, brown against each other, so they don't come together to challenge the system. So I think that's a really important point to make. That if we want to create the world that we know in our hearts is possible, it's often leadership is not going to lead us there. We have to be the change we want and impact and lead a different movement. Because if we expect those in power to kind of, they're following us in a way, or trying to maintain their own stance and their own positions. So if we want to make things different and upset the status quo, because many times leaderships are in place because people, we get complacent, we think, oh, it's good enough, it's fine. But if it's not really working out for some, it really does take that grassroots to come together and make a difference. It's possible. It's not easy though. But
It's possible, but not easy. And I think Charles has a really great comment. Many white men and white women will oppose changing the system because it either helps them or they fear being hurt by another system. Thank you so much for raising that, Charles. And it's so sad because we know that the reason why we can't have nice things in this country, the reason why we can't prevent gun violence from being the number one cause of the death of children in this country. The reason why we can't have universal health care so that everybody can get their health needs taken care of. The reason why we can't, so many different things is because white people will be coerced by white leaders to believe that they are better than everybody else, and that those things like having universal health care or gun protections will harm them, when in fact, as the book Dying of Whiteness points out, white men are the most likely to die of a gunshot wound, and they're most likely to die because they're committing suicide using guns. White people are dying of overdoses, alcoholism. Our death rate, our longevity as white people is going way down. All of these things, we would be so much better served if we united and created a society based in love. And I also think that many white people fear that we white people have oppressed people of color for so long and maintained this status up here and pushed down. Racial equity is about figuring out what needs to change so that these folks can be here, but the idea is not for this. It's not supposed to be, oh, now they're going to push down on us. That's not what we're striving for. We're striving for this, which will then lead to this, right? It will be better for everyone. But that is extremely threatening. And also, as we'll talk about tomorrow, a lot of intergenerational trauma with that one.
yeah, and I'll just add that I also think that just in our human nature, there's often a bias towards the devil that we know. We know this. It's bad, but it's familiar. It's what keeps us in jobs that aren't great for us, what keeps us in relationships. It's, there's such a bias that, oh, I may be going for something, I want something different, but what if that's worse? And
Yes.
I think that, the devil that that we also collectively can overcome. It's hard to do it by yourself.
100%, 100%. And we've never seen that's what Audre Lorde told us. We've never seen this. So we're going to have to create it. We're going to have to create the patterns of relating across differences equals because no one has ever shown us how to do it. This is what the wealthy, powerful people who profit from racism and patriarchy really do not want to see. They really did not want to see in 2020 young white people in all 50 states, in suburbs, in small towns, in the sundown town where I grew up. I had never seen anyone protest anything, and there they were out in the streets for George Floyd. That was a huge I would argue that everything we are experiencing right now is the direct reflection of that. That someone said to me that the point of Project 2025 is to prevent 2045, which is when people of color will become the majority of Americans. And they really do not want young white people to empathize with people of color. And they really do not want to see this. So this is Fred Hampton in the late 60s, early 70s in Chicago, bringing together the Black Panthers with the Young Lords, who were the Puerto Rican organization, and the Young Patriots, who were the white organization of working class people in Chicago. That's why the FBI infiltrated and assassinated him because they did not want to see. They know that this is the biggest threat to power is um, Black people, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, and white people all forming a a coalition, and that's what they're trying to prevent. So they invest tremendously in getting racist and patriarchal beliefs into our heads. And then, as you were saying, Vilma, normalizing those beliefs so that we think there's something wrong with us or there's something wrong with having a different set of beliefs. I will speak from my own experience. Yesterday, I shared about growing up in a sundown town. So the town that I lived in had been a sundown town, meaning a community where there was a sign on the outskirts of town, "Welcome to Loveland, Colorado," and then underneath it was a hand painted sign, "We practice Jim Crow laws here." And that sign was up for, I don't know, several decades. By the time I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, that sign had come down, but the belief system that erected it was definitely still there. And who's going to be the first family of color to be like, oh, let me go move to that town? That seems like a really nice place to live. And as we talked about yesterday, there were thousands of sundown towns all throughout the country. There's actually, if you Google sundown town directory, you can look up if your town was a sundown town. Also, many suburbs and urban neighborhoods were redlined. So they would draw red lines and say, don't make mortgage loans, don't make business loans in these neighborhoods, and then they draw green lines for white neighborhoods and only allow white people to live in those neighborhoods. So this is why so many of us grow up in residential segregation, attending segregated schools. So in my case, my parents were open-minded, democratic, people. They taught me that racism is terrible, Dr. Martin Luther King is wonderful, and the way to not be racist is to be colorblind and to treat everybody the same. But because we lived in an almost entirely white community, I never actually observed them doing that, right? And I saw a lot of very disturbing images of Black people, especially on TV. Like I remember seeing these images and being like, what is going on?" And meanwhile, at school, I remember this so distinctly in elementary school, going to a Nancy Reagan Just Say No school assembly. So Nancy Reagan wanted to um, end the epidemic of teenage drug use by having school assemblies led by police officers, and they showed us films of basically consisted of Black people overdosing on heroin. Okay, and then they told us if you so much as smoke marijuana, that will be you. So I'm sitting there in my almost entirely white elementary school watching this film that is being presented by cops and teachers. Of course, I'm going to start to believe that Black people are scary and dangerous and not to be like them. That is literally what they are teaching me. So I would, and then, yes, then going back to my parents, when I went home and said, well, if racism is so terrible, and now opportunities are just, why is there so much racial inequality? My parents said to me, well, we used to have racism, terrible racism, but then there was a civil rights movement led by Dr. King, and now opportunities are distributed equally. And some families like ours work really hard, and that's why we have what we have, and other families choose not to. And that's why they're in their situation that they're in. And I think that's what a lot of my white friends are telling their kids today. This is why a lot of my work is around talking with white people about how to talk with your kids about racism. So I have a question for people. And thank you so much, Iman. I'm so honored that you're here. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. What is harmful, inaccurate, and racist about what I learned from my parents and school about racial inequality? And then how similar or dissimilar was it from what your parents and school taught you about racial inequality? Type in A if it's similar, B if it's dissimilar, or C if your parents never taught you anything about racial inequality and you just sort of observed what you observed and drew your own conclusions. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's so sweet. That means the world coming from you. Iman is an incredible educator. I'm so grateful to her. And yes, in my humble opinion, we are still redlining. That is 100% right. Here in Marin County, a Black family wanted to sell their home and they were having trouble getting the price that they wanted. And so they removed all their artwork, all their photographs, and had their white friend come over and pretend to be the owner of the home and showed it. And then all of a sudden, it received a much higher value in the appraiser, right? B for sure. Thank you. Thank you, Iman. Thank you. Yes. Very, very, very dissimilar, right? It is so harmful, inaccurate, and racist to claim that white people have what we have because we work hard. My family benefited from the Homestead Act. My that land is still in my family's possession. It's how my mother was born there. It's how she went to college, how I went to college, as part of her family. That the Homestead Act was intentionally designated for white people. And then as we talk about um, the redlining and greenlining, that was another way intentionally designed for white people to accumulate wealth that was deliberately withheld from other people. And then to claim that the civil rights movement solved racism and now opportunities are distributed equally and some families choose to take advantage of them and others choose not to is complete bullshit. There is no that is categorically just completely without any truth to it whatsoever. But as we're going to go into, white people frequently live in white bubbles where these kinds of messages get circulated around. Um, Iman says, I teach Black history from a decolonized perspective, and it's mind boggling how much is left out. Thank you, Iman. Thank you for teaching that. And yeah, I mean, I don't remember ever in my high school, we were 1,000 students. There were 200 guys on our football team, and we were always state champions in football and basketball. And so the coaches taught social studies because that was the easy subject, history and stuff like that. I don't think I ever heard anything about Black history growing up in my school system. Now, of course, we were starting to educate people more about Black history, and the current administration is trying to erase all of that, and as well as grassroots groups of white parents demanding that they take Black history out of schools. I learned most of what I did in college. Yes, 100%. 100%. I wish everyone had access to amazing ethnic studies classes and AP Black history and all these great classes while they're in high school. And I wish everyone just got access to this information that we're sharing here. Please do share us, especially day 4, when we're going to be talking about initiating trust across difference. I wish they taught that in every high school. That would be so helpful. So, okay, I was supposed to say, when I say peanut butter, what is the first idea that comes in your mind?
Chocolate. No.
Yes, jelly, right? Why do we have such a strong association between peanut butter and jelly? Any thoughts? For many people, peanut butter and jelly is one of the first um, foods that their parents gave them, right? And ultimately that they learned how to make for themselves. It may be something that they brought to school to eat for lunch. We have had peanut butter and jelly over and over and over again associated. Now, does peanut butter actually have anything to do with jelly? No, but we have just seen it over and over again. So we've formed this very strong association in our minds. And over time, other associations that we've also been exposed to over and over again come together. And yes, easy lunch, high protein, and kids typically all like it. Yes, exactly. And also affordable. And peanut butter, you don't have to refrigerate it, it lasts a long time. Yes, all of those things. So over time, our brains become like a junk drawer, right? Of beliefs based on what we have seen over and over again, especially those things that have been given to us by those closest to us. And now, in a junk drawer, are there some useful items? 100%, right? Some of that stuff is fine. But overlaid on top of it is stuff that is broken, stuff that doesn't work, all these other things. And so we have to be the ones to go in there and audit that junk drawer and straighten it out. And does it work if we do this once in a while? No. We got to continuously, the junk will just start accumulating. We have to continuously open that junk drawer. And of course, the first step is realizing we have a junk drawer and that it is a problem and that deserves our attention. So I'd like you to take a minute and write down the names of the 6 people who you are closest to. Okay. Just think of the 6 people that you would call not your family members, but your friendship circle, your professional network. If, let's say, you lost your job and you needed to find another job, or you had some really good news that you wanted to share, who are the 6 people who you would call, and then put a check next to the name of the ones who have the same race as you. And are you seeing any patterns here? Do you know any patterns? Social scientists have actually studied this, Americans' friendship networks. And what they found, pretty interesting stuff. On average, Asian Americans' friend networks are 65% Asian American, and 31% of Asian American social circles are 100% Asian American. Latinx friend networks are 63% Latinx, and 36% of Latinx American social circles are 100% Latinx. On average, Black Americans' friend networks are 78% Black, and 46% of Black Americans' social circles are 100% Black. And on average, white Americans' friend networks are 90% white, and 67%, 2/3 of white people, uh, have 100% white friend networks. So I'm just curious, how does that land? Do these numbers surprise you? In what ways do racially homogeneous friend networks make sense? And in what ways are racially homogeneous friend networks harmful?
I'll just say when I did this list, and I feel it's really helpful, even just 6 people, I can think of 2 or 3 right away if I had good news of women that I would call. But just thinking over 5, wow, how many? And I had to throw in a guy or two that are, really the best friend of my husband's who I see a lot. So that just listing the people that we're close to. And then because I'm Puerto Rican, there's not a lot of Puerto Ricans. I mean, there is a lot in the Bay, but I don't. We have to intentionally see each other. Um, I do have a good range, but I can see where there are some differences, and it's not something we ever really discuss. Like, obviously, when I'm in a Puerto Rican group, there's a certain level of comfort, and we have shared music, and then when you're with someone who, and I've made an intentional effort to even be more in white spaces, and I've been surprised at how well I have been connecting with some women in these white spaces. And they're not spaces, because a lot of times we're in spaces, but it's work related, or it's with our kids, and there's something, there's more norms, and as opposed to being with someone who you're just with on a friendship. But it's a really interesting exercise. I appreciate this.
Yeah, yeah. Charles says 3 men, 3 women, 1 Asian, 2 Hispanics, but I'm a radical. Yes, you are, Charles. We're so glad to see you. Oh, and he says we need to get rid of junk food and junk mentalities 100%. And also, I also want to take the shame away from it, right? It's not something to feel guilty and shameful about that there's a lot of junk beliefs or that people eat a lot of junk food. It's literally what we are fed. It's what we have access to. Iman said she learned a lot about Black history when she went to college. They're not they're not making it easy for people to learn about this stuff, okay? So let's not feel shameful or look down upon ourselves. Breathe in compassion for ourselves, breathe out compassion for others. But I do find it very interesting. I mean, racially homogenous friend networks, just as you were saying, Vilma, do make a lot of sense in some ways because, of course, you're going to feel affinity with people who like the same kind of music and, share the same kind of culture. It makes sense, right? But in other ways, if you are exclusively associating with white people, as two-thirds of white Americans do, you are missing out on all the other people's stories, right? You are only hearing other white people's stories. So, of course, it is going to be affirming all those junk drawer beliefs because no one else's stories are getting in there.
Yes, and I'll just add what Iman was saying about learning stuff in college. Depending on where you grew up, too, you get a regional sort of education about, like, if you grew up in the South, the Civil War is phrased very differently, states' rights, and somehow the South isn't, I mean, they're not put up on a pedestal, or there are actually many statues of them on a pedestal. But you're going to get a different frame around some of this history than if you grew up in New England or if you grew up in California. I mean, in California, every like fourth or fifth grader does this thing about the missions and the missions in California, and there's been a lot of pushback around what the missions represent for Native Americans in California, as opposed to what it does about the what it means to the development of California as a whole. So the regional stuff, it's not just what you learn in college, but depending on where you were in elementary and middle school and high school, can very much color what you learn. There's no standard curriculum across the country.
100%. And that teaching of the Confederacy in a favorable light was 100% engineered by white women. The United Daughters of the Confederacy hired hired history book writers to make it sound like the Confederacy was wonderful and slavery was all a very nice thing and everybody was happy, la la la, and then got them installed in the schools and then got statues of Confederate, quote, heroes erected in public space. And they were doing this for a very long time, like up until very, very recently, 2020, these statues started to come down. And now the administration is trying to bring them back again. Um, Iman says, yes, the Monopoly board was rigged for 400 years. Come through, Iman, 100%,
Yes,
100.
in 1619.
16, we talked about 1619 yesterday. I'll send you the link so you can see that part. The other thing that's really bad about having racially homogenous social circles, particularly white racially homogenous social circles, is this thing called social capital. So that's what you exchange with the people you know. How do most people find out about jobs? Through word of mouth. How do they find out about other opportunities, internships, where to send your kid to a good school, scholarships, all these different types of things from people they know. So if white people are exclusively associating with other white people and exchanging our social capital with other white people, that is further perpetuating the racial wealth gap. Is this making sense to people? And we see this really right now. Dr. Janice Gassimasare, in response to Katika Roy's research on, I think it's now up to 350,000 Black women pushed out of the labor force um, since January of this year. Um, and these Black women, out there without a social network, if their social network is largely composed of other Black women who are also struggling, how are they going to access other opportunities? Now, I know Black women are fierce, entrepreneurial, and always capable of making a dollar out of 15 cents, but it would be beneficial if we had a little broader social networks so that we could help each other out. This is also what we're trying to do in the Interracial Sisterhood Coalition. It's part of it is getting together to heal the divide between women, and to listen to each other's stories. And part of it is political education and activism and working on changing policies, but part of it is also really mutual aid and how can we support each other as women, whether we need a new job or we are leaving a bad relationship or have young kids, whatever the case may be. How can we be supportive of one another in a transformational way? And how can we clean out those junk drawers and get rid? I am obviously, a big time proponent of books and reading. Like, I love to read about racism. I love to go to hear when people come to town to talk about racism. I love to listen to the podcasts, all of those things. But the greatest learning and transformation in my understanding of racism has come from listening to other women's stories. Okay. And that's also really forced me to confront my harmful assumptions and stereotypes. And it's also come from seeing other women really role model what it is to be an interracial sister, what it is to truly be supportive of other women, to really know how to relate with everybody with tremendous compassion, and authenticity and integrity. And I was just so fortunate, throughout my career to work in majority people of color organizations. Almost all of my bosses, almost all the people I reported to, the leaders I reported to, were women of color. And they gave me very, very direct feedback on ways I could improve. And they also role modeled such excellence in what I would call sisterliness. And it just really opened my eyes to a whole other way of being. And that's what I really want to achieve through the Interracial Sisterhood Coalition. So that's why we create these spaces outside of the workplace, where we can come together and listen to each other's stories and work through things. It's not as if no harm ever occurs at an interracial sisterhood retreat. It does. But we stay there and we work through it and we get through it together. And we learn what that is like. What is repair like? And then we take that and we're able to bring it into every space that we extend out to. And with that said, I don't know, does anyone have any questions or reflections on what I've said so far?
I have a question, Karen,
Sure.
and it's not staged, so people think maybe I have my question. You don't. Um, when you are trying to build an interracial sisterhood, but it's primarily voluntary, people can be in, and things get heated and people start opting out. How much to get people back in? How much do you try to maintain a circle, or do you just stay and work with the people who want to deal with this and let those who aren't ready or emotionally taxed? I mean, how do you, when you're trying to grow a circle, a community, and some people are, hurt by comments or practices, and they're like, no, I'm done. How much chasing do you do of that circle? Or what would your thoughts be about that?
Yeah, I mean, I only want people to be in the space if they choose to. That's why it is an opt-in space, right? And it breaks my heart when ruptures occur, and I want to have one-on-one conversations to see if repair can be made. But if people don't want repair, and people aren't willing to be accountable for what they did, I'm not, this is a flat thing. There's no I don't believe in hierarchy and saying this. I do think it's really important for uh when people have caused harm and they may not even understand why what they did is harmful, to be held to account for that, for someone to work through with them why what they did is harmful, and to work through and I think there's a lot of shame and just plain ego. People don't want to admit that they were wrong. I recently, had a major fiasco. I did something very harmful and got called out for it, and I was so embarrassed. And also people said it hurt so badly because I am the one white woman who they actually trust and let in, and then for me to cause harm in that way just really, really, it hurt. And I'm still working on repair from that. But I honestly believe that people call you out or call you in because they care about you, and they want to be in relationship with you, and they want you to do better, and they see that it is possible for you to do better. And so I would encourage those of us with more privileged identities to really work on repair. Yes, yes, exactly, Beverly. People need to be called out for their poor behavior and abuse when they have caused, I'm sorry, when they have caused, I
Innumerable,
innumerable
innumerable.
harm to another human being, or any harm at all, right? You know, um, I
I,
agree with
I
that.
I was just thinking, like, let's say you have a softball team or something very informal. I
Yes.
understand you were speaking of the interracial sisterhood, but what if you just have a neighborhood group or a book club, and it's mostly white women, but you've got a few women of color, and everything's going good, but then maybe you're discussing a book, things get heated, something, and then some of these women of color or sometimes white women, like, oh, I'm not here for this, I'm going for the community, for being in the book club and learning. I don't need to be felt bad about either on the white woman's side, something I said that I didn't mean racist, and the woman of color thinking, I don't I put up enough aggressions in my work, or I don't need to do it in my book club. What about those times when there's not really a hierarchy, a president? Well, there is usually someone calling the book club, but how much to kind of go after people who are leaving, and how would you deal with some of that when it's not a work thing, it's just supposed to be something that's pleasurable, but it's gone ugly in a racial turn?
Yeah. Well, I would advise anyone with a privileged identity that when someone calls you out, the first words out of your mouth should be thank you. Okay? Thank you for pointing that out. Um, you may need to take some time to digest what was said. Okay? But do not escalate, do not retaliate. If you don't understand why what you did or said was harmful, bring that to another friend with a privileged identity who's further along in their journey and can help you break it down. Don't put the onus on the person you harmed to educate you about why what you did is harmful. Okay. And then show up better. show up better. Learn from that experience. Apologize for what you did. Name the harm that you caused. Thank them for pointing it out and say, I'm going to work on it and not do that again. And I really appreciate you pointing it out because I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't have pointed it out to me. Okay, if we can all just learn to walk through this world with a little less ego and a little more humility and grace, we can just we would we can all learn to thrive together. Could you please have two networks, one for women and one for all of us? As I want to see change, but obviously I'm not a woman. And so sometimes I shouldn't be around so that you ladies can let your hair down. Charles Phillips, we love you. You are awesome. As I mentioned, it's only the interracial sisterhood retreats where we don't have men, but when we have our events and everything, men are more than welcome. Any person, man, uh, non-binary, who cares about healing racial divides, ending patriarchy. Of course, men have to be involved in ending patriarchy. We cannot do this by ourselves. So we would love to have you, Charles Phillips. Okay. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. This participation has been fantastic. Um, the Interracial Sisterhood Retreat, November 6 through 10 in Barbados at La Maison Michel. I would love for you to come to this. Let's see. Can we put that? Oh, let me take this. I'll take the link and pop it in the chat. It's right around the corner. I don't know about you, but this year has been a lot. And I am so counting down the days until I can land in Barbados and make my way to La Maison Michel, which is a Black woman owned luxury private villa. Okay. It is going to be so amazing. And the information about the retreat, you can look it up on our website. That's the link right there. It links right to the retreat website. I just so thank everybody who's participated, and I encourage you to come tomorrow. Tomorrow's theme is becoming cycle breakers and change makers. And again, this is where we'll be talking about how it's not just, racist beliefs, but it is like in our bodies, this intergenerational trauma. And that's what shows up when we interact. And we have to work on healing from our intergenerational trauma and becoming those cycle breakers. And we'll be talking about how do we move from the cycle of socialization that we were just talking about, of like, not learning about um, the truth about racism and white supremacy, and then exclusively associating with white people and getting a lot of fearful messages, blah, 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 into the cycle of liberation where we center with love, with self compassion, with care, and then we start to bridge and expand who we care about. We breathe in compassion for ourselves, breathe out compassion for others. That's what we'll be doing tomorrow. And then, of course, we also have Thursday is initiating trust across difference. And Friday is building interracial sisterhood. And we would love for you to come. Thank you all so very much. Vilma, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to encourage people who've gotten something out of this today or yesterday to send a link around for, even if you can just pop up once. I've learned so much and I keep learning. And I think that's what everyone could benefit from, and I'm sure you learn when you teach this, and I just hope that people can share this link even if you can't come. LinkedIn is a big place, Facebook, and let people know. Just even 1 hour, it just could spark things, different thoughts, different ideas, and everyone can sort of go off on their own little interracial sisterhood path.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Vilma. And of course, these are recorded. So people want to watch, and each one is standalone, but they do build on each other. So people want to watch the past ones and get caught up. They're more than welcome to do that too. Okay. Thank you, everybody.